Welcome to the course Environmental Impact Assessments, and today is the last lecture of this particular course, and we're going to take part 2 of the case study which we are already doing. We are looking at water aerodrome of Andaman and Nicobar. So we're looking at that particular case, and in this particular session, while you're looking at this case, you review all the aspects, culminate all the aspects which you have learned in this particular course, beginning from the environmental status to the how we evolved in the understanding of EIA, and then what different legislation standards are involved and different methods which are involved in the process, and about the public participation and what kind of issues we are still facing. So while we're looking at this EIA, you also see where does this EIA stands, and then you try to see how advanced or what are the areas where the improvements can be really made with this particular case. So this case also had certain kind of observations and obstructions which were there related to its adequacy and inadequacy. So you can also reflect on it and think with the wider exposure which you have now. So in this part 2, we're going to continue with where we had stopped. So we're going to look at the chapter 5 from the CIA report, where we are looking at the analysis of alternatives. So how different alternatives were looked into for this particular project. So while looking at the alternatives in this particular case, the team looked into alternative project sites. So you see different project sites which they looked into. They have identified those project sites, site 1, site 2, site 3 and site 4. And then they evaluated for its feasibility and what kind of impacts it would have. So you see that in the narrative they write site number 1, 2 and 3 may not be feasible as per visual inspection, as they are exposed to action by open sea which is undesirable. Moreover, the beaches are rocky in nature and water retreats to a great extent during low tide, exposing the rocks. Such rocky terrain and tidal variation is not recommended for safe water aerodrome operations. So the alternatives which were taken here were not considered a safer option for the purpose for which the project had to be undertaken. So think about what kind of alternatives are being evaluated here for comparison purpose. So looking at the next alternative which they looked into was alternative for energy and water conservation. So for this, they looked into the solar energy option for the purpose of supply of electricity, and then also use of energy efficient building materials, and then also looking at what kind of rating they would have in their functioning, and how they would also recycle sewage for production of what kind of sewage treatment they would undertake to reduce the consumption of water, and then also how they would harvest rainwater for protection or conservation of water. So that was about the alternatives. So you can discuss or think on how the alternatives have to be really dealt with, to what intensity and what choices should be covered. Further, they present the environmental monitoring program here. So how they're going to monitor the performance, environmental performance of the project. So with that, phase-wise, they are giving proposal where they look into construction phase. So during the construction phase, how they would look at the air and noise monitoring, how they're going to look at the water management, how they're going to look at the biotic environment, and how they're going to undertake soil monitoring. So they have mentioned during the construction period, they're going to monitor all that to avoid impact on these environment here. And then during operation phase, again, they would be monitoring all these air and noise, water, wastewater, and then biotic environment, soil monitoring, and then also they have allocated funds for environmental monitoring plan. So they have allocated funding for that. So you can see what range of funding it has. So you can see the total funding. You can see 3.34 per lakhs per annum. In every year, they would spend somewhere around 3 lakhs every year for all kind of um, air quality check, noise level check, drinking water, biotic, marine water check during the construction phase. And then likewise they have the monitoring plan for operation phase, so which has like 11 lakh 11 plus lakh for every year they would be spending on monitoring all these environment. And the Environmental Monitoring Agency, which will be involved, they have mentioned that they would be using certified laboratory, which will help and approved by MOEF and CC. So approved by them, they would be pointing them to monitor the environmental parameters in and around the project site as per their proposal. So in this project, you see that they had also undertaken additional studies because you understand the unique nature of the project here. So the public consultation part, you see that as per the TOR, they had to undertake public hearing, was to be conducted at for the proposed project, and when and where they did it, they have documented that. And public hearing was carried out in following places: Panchayat Bhavan, Govind Nagar Panchayat, Swaraj Dweep, South Andaman District. So all the issues which were raised and the comments raised by the public, the commitments by the project proponents on the same has been aligned with the budgetary allocation. So whatever input came, so they have incorporated and also made budgetary allocation for that. So you can see the list of issues which are raised and the comments of the project proponent here. So given the demographic profile, you can see who all are the attendee. So we don't get to see the male and female participants here, as well as indigenous people's participation here, but then that's given here, so you can think upon it when you look at the demographic profile, how the participants could be. But there are a lot of practical limitations which come in, but you can always review how the participation is being undertaken. So you can see different attendees who have attended here, and then what kind of inputs they have got. So mostly you see that there's a lot of positive review which they have got. Like you can see Ajit Kumar Roy, local resident and Pradhan. So he has welcomed the proposal of water aerodrome, and it is going to support and intensify tourism activity, and operation of seaplane will increase the connectivity of Port Blair to Swaraj Deep. So it was a positive comment which has been documented here. So we can see here one of the comment here, Probeen Bawali here, local resident, wants to know whether due to operation of the seaplane, the fishermen of Swaraj Deep will be affected. So project proponent informed that due to operation of seaplane service, neither fishing activity nor any fisherman is going to be affected. So that was the comment of the project proponents. Though we are not aware about the details of it. But that is what the concerns of the local people came, and how that has been responded. Those details are not here at this moment, what we can see from here. So there are not many comments have been raised by the local residents. So you also see where the public participation is happening, how mature the people are to really raise those concerns and arguments or concerns of their people. So that also you as a learner of this course also need to understand that. So public participation, that is what we have seen here. So next we see is the risk assessment. So risk assessment methodology, what they have adopted here. So we have also studied about the risk assessment methodology. So you can see the flow chart here for risk analysis, how they are identifying the hazard, how they are doing the quantification of the hazard, and what is the credible scenario, worst scenario, and estimation of consequences and frequency of occurrence. So all that has been done here. So you can see disaster category. They have created the table here, and they have also identified the vulnerability here. So you see here the preliminary hazard analysis, what they have done here. So that has also been presented here. So natural causes, physical hazard, biohazard, electrical hazard, hazardous substance, and waste. So phase of project in which that is likely to happen. So that all has been ticked here. So that's very relevant here for this particular case. So that study has been undertaken here. So you see how they are looking at all the aspects of what possibility are there of his risk, what risk are there in this particular case. So you can see all that during the operation, construction, and post operation phase. So they have identified top 10 hazardous locations. So you can see fire explosion hazard due to gas cylinders during construction phase. Then security threat, toxic gases. Then you can see stampede during evacuation, fire explosion hazard at the fuel at DG set, then natural disaster like tsunami, natural hazards like cyclones, landslide, and earthquakes. So they also created safety information sheet, and how they're going to keep a record of that. So further you see also they have also created all kind of information about what diesel they are using, ingredient and diesel, and so on. And then they have done all kind of hazard potential location mapping, so which we had seen. So they have undertaken those kind of mapping here. You can also see risk assessment matrix here. So you see the likelihood of any kind of risk happening. So A to E you can see will occur, likely to occur, should occur, could occur, till like the consequences, insignificant, minor, moderate, major, catastrophic. So you see how they have analyzed it here, and then all likely accident scenarios, and then also they have analyzed the vulnerability and impact assessments related with tsunami and all kind of flooding which can happen. So that has been seen. Then you also see that they have looked into the time series data with respect to Port Blair. So they have looked into 30 years average 1981 to 2010 data to understand how the flooding vulnerability is there with respect to heavy rain coinciding with high tide timing. So you also see that they have looked at the seaplane, because of that what kind of vulnerability is there. Contact, collision, grounding, crosswind, hits rocks, what can possibly happen. Then you also see aircraft crash incidents also can happen. Aircraft incidents due to bird strike, hazard posed to infrastructure in surrounding areas. So landing overshoot, landing veer off, take off, veer off, and all that analysis has been undertaken. So with respect to landing, you can see that they have done a fishbone diagram, what possible scenarios can happen. And then also you see in the report, they have also done the study of cyclone strike, and then they have looked into the vulnerability. So here you see what's the visibility, a number of days in the year, what would be the visibility range. So they have also looked into the vulnerability aspect and what kind of impact it would have with respect to cyclone strike. And then likewise, you can see with the earthquake, they have looked into the historic data and tried to understand that as well. And then you can see here landslide, same way you can see fire and explosion. So what are the rules which they have to abide by? So that has been studied here. So you also see any kind of vulnerable zone for bomb blast, which can also likely happen in the place like this. So what kind of threats are there, and what are the possibilities, and what will be its impact? Likewise, you can see toxic gas release, which can happen. They have studied that as well, and what are the risk of oxygen deficiency. Further, you can see the new subject here coming. It's related with epidemics, pandemic, and then COVID-19. So what can happen in this, given it's a very sensitive area, and what are the failure frequency assessment? So event failure frequency. So what event can happen? You can see in the table: high speed diesel stock accidental spill, followed by pool fire. So event frequency. So you see it's very less likely to happen in a year. Then event 2, vehicle at parking fuel release, followed by fire. Event 3, seaplane mishap, followed by fuel fire and explosion. Further, they have studied risk assessment related with individual risk. And what do they mean by individual risk? Risk to a person in the vicinity of a hazard. This include nature of the injury to individual, the likelihood of injury occurring, and the time period over which the injury might occur. So they have given the formula here, they have calculated it, what's the possibility of that, and how the population is distributed in and around the facility, which can lead to individual risk. So what are the risk of fatalities in this particular facility? So you can see at event 3, 5, 7 and all those, what are the individual risk fatalities which can happen every year. So you see that's the calculations show very less possibility of that happening. So they have also calculated societal risk calculation. So you remember individual risk calculation and societal risk calculation. So here also frequency number curve, FN curve, that also you have studied about. So they have done that calculations here as well. So estimated number of fatalities for each incident outcome case. So what kind of event can happen? You can see in the table here: seaplane mishap followed by fuel fire or explosion. So what's the possibility of frequency, what's the cumulative frequency, and estimated number of fatalities which can happen. So aligned with that, what are the risk mitigation measures which they are taking? So for that, they have mock drills, training, awareness program, and ensure dedicated obstruction-free pathway at the assembly point. So all that is as taken as a mitigation measure, and then they are also looking at the policies here, and then decontamination support, special population support, and training and capacity building. So all that would be taken care of. So they have also created a response plan. So if anything mishap happens, what will be the response plan? So you see the disaster management organization. There how it works and what kind of response plan they have. So how each one would be responsible for what kind of responding and taking care of the activity. So emergency response guide they have prepared, which will help them to take action as and when any kind of mishap happens. So you can see the stable emergency response guide, as well as you can see step to declare category 3 emergency, off-site emergency. So how they would be doing that. So these will be the procedural aspects. And then you also see the what kind of rescue and relief operation which will be taking place, response activities specific to the disaster, and what kind of services and support they are going to offer, and what kind of recovery plan they would have, what kind of medical assistance, and what kind of insurance they would offer. So all the inventory of the resources, what kind of financial arrangements are made for all that has been given in detail here. So you can see that here, and what kind of common role and responsibilities they would take. So all that has been mentioned here in any kind of risk. So now coming to next segments, we look at the project benefits. So here what the EIA report suggests indicates that there will be improvement in the physical infrastructure. The project will improve the physical infrastructure in this area, and it will not disturb the existing pattern of drainage because the way it has been designed. And then it will also improve the social infrastructure in the area. So it says that it will not disturb the existing pattern of the social relation and the democratic setup. And likewise, the health level goes along with the flow of funds and avenues of livelihood. And it will also depend what they write on the public health center, primary health center, and how that would also respond. So their assumption about there'll be improvement in the social infrastructure, and then they also mention there'll be employment potential, like there's employment potential for skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled people. So the project and its supporting activity need many types of people, right from the manual to managerial strength. So they would be needing people for that. So for the proposed project, there'll be 40 to 50% are expected to be employed for the skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled categories. So how they would really employ people here. So the project predicts that there will be positive benefit from the project. And then there's direct revenue earning to the national agency here. So you see that here the central government would benefit from this particular project. And then there will be also other tangible benefits. So like aesthetic improvement, there'll be developed economy strength, there'll be economic strengthening in this, and then it would also expected to bring literacy and healthfulness and improve the safety and security. However, we do not see how this would be really done here, but that's given as a descriptive statement here. So that was part of the project benefits. So it writes about number of positive benefits of the project. Then you also see the environmental cost benefit analysis, what they have done. So as per the standard TOR, they have undertaken cost benefit analysis. Then you see in the chapter 10, they have covered environmental management plans. So here you see how, what's the organizational structure, how it is going to take care of things. So you see the environmental cell, what will be the composition and how it will take care at every phase of the project. And then how they will look after each component, air component, at every phase, noise problem, then water environment at every phase of the project, and how they will take care of solid waste and other things in every case. And then you also see how they are allocating budget for the environmental management plan. So we do not see the social management plan here, but we do see the environmental management plan. So like how different physical environments will be taken care of and what kind of budget has been allocated for the purpose. So how they would undertake that. So you see all that has been covered here, particulars about what will be undertaken, what are the components, and what is the budgetary allocation, and how much they will spend every year into that. And then they would also develop a green belts, and what's the plan for that, and what are the trees they're going to plant around it, what are the total available trees and trees which they would be cutting. So there are 87 trees to be cut, 82, and then how they're going to develop the green belt around it. So they have prepared the drawings and numbers, and the proposed list for green belt has been also provided. So likewise, you also see they have worked out on the traffic management, how they're going to manage the traffic, the internal traffic, how they're going to take care of it. So now we see the last part of the report, which deals with the disclosure of the consultant. So you see what all things are disclosed by the consultant. So you see that Enviro Resources is the NBET accredited EIA consultant, and what are the areas in which they are accredited sector wise for this. So you can see all the domain which they have worked on from 1 to 13 areas you can see, and like what kind of things they are engaged in providing environmental consultancy. So you can see they provide environmental clearance, they provide environmental impact assessments, they prepare environmental management plan, environmental due diligence services, and then you also see CRZ clearance, forest clearance, compliance report. And then they also are involved in designing and commissioning of ETP, STP, WTP, and zero liquid discharge, and also preparation of quantitative risk analysis, preparation on on-site, off-site emergency preparedness plan, and also any kind of legal matter they can handle it. So we have seen the entire report of EIA for this particular water aerodrome case, and you see what kind of analysis have been done, what kind of analysis have not been undertaken. So you can think of ecosystem services, which is not yet required as per the legislation in our scenario, but what kind of potential it had to understand from this, where we have questions like would the fishermen would be impacted or not from coming from the public hearing. So all that kind of what other areas and what other details could have been covered, and what are the details which have been covered very well. So you can review all those aspects and see what are the advantages of the EIA process which was followed here, what are the advantages of entire legislation which was followed here, the process of TOR which was followed here, and what was missed out. So you can look into that. So winding up, this is the culminating session of the entire course. So we have covered a range of topics which you have seen. So you see that how we end with the series of case studies where we see how the EIA report looks like and what is really happening in the practice and how it is addressing to the sustainable development aspect. So today in particular, we covered the part 2 of EIA case study, and with this we end this particular course session. So the key reference for this particular session was the EIA report of this particular case, and you are already aware of the key textbooks which we have used in this. And for these case studies, I would encourage you to talk more in the discussion forum and give your feedback on what all you observed while we skimmed through the entire report here. So these are the suggested watch and read, which you can see more, and plus there were suggestions related with case studies from different parts of the world from where all the learners are coming together. So I would be sharing all of those in the discussion forum as far as possible. And you are free to ask questions and let us know about any concerns you have. Do share your opinions, experiences, and suggestions. Looking forward to interacting and co-learning with you while exploring EIA. So continue discussing with us, continue posting your questions to us, and we'll try to answer as much as possible. Thank you so much.